It's like when you decide to watch porn, but then it turns out it's Sesame Street. Disclaimer. This review is made by someone who cannot speak Japanese, so most of the sentences sounded like someone went from somewhere to somewhere else because someone else said something. But this is what I could decipher. In the early Edo period, when the peace between humans, yokai and demons was unstable, our heroine Kayo is made to act as the princess on the way from Edo to Sumpu, today's Shizuoka, where the princess is to be married to the new shogun after Tokugawa Tadanaga committed suicide. But as this bridal procession will be exceptionally dangerous due to the political uproar and the real princess being in bad health, Kayo has to take her place for the procession, and is accompanied by 6 of the most talented and courageous samurai of the country, who all have their own reasons for taking such a dangerous job and wanting to participate in a sword fighting contest where they have the chance to win a legendary sword with the power to seal yokai and get a wish granted from the shogun. But could there be more to this procession, and what is the story of each of these samurai? And of course, every samurai has their own secrets, but they are not connected to each other and you can play in whichever order you like. The most uninteresting character for me was Kuroba. He's the typical lonely samurai, strong, undefeated, but haunted by regrets of having killed people during his time as a samurai, and that's why he takes his last job but plans to retire afterwards. Not only is he haunted by his conscience, but also the yokai residing in his sword, a girl in high spirits always hungry for either food or blood. That is nagging Kuroba quite a bit. He usually is calm, but I wouldn't describe him as cold. He likes to stick to himself, but at the same time cares for others. So he's kind of a lonely wolf trope and one of many samurai tormented by their deeds. I mean, we just left the Sengoku era, one of the most brutal war times in Japanese history. So Kuroba really brings nothing new to the table. A tormented, lonely samurai. Next I played Sakyo, the girl of the bunch. I mean, apart from the MC. Though he is on the hunt for Oni and can get pretty scary in that process, he still looks and speaks like a girl, and neither the CGs nor himself can or even try to hide that. And at least the beginning of his route was even less spectacular than Kuroba's, as he is ill for the majority of his own route and rests in Kayo's room. Why doesn't her father notice? I don't know. Maybe he doesn't worry because he thinks Sakyo is a girl. As underwhelming as the first chapters of his route were, as surprising were the last. His motive is revenge, so in the bad endings he gets totally consumed by it and totally loses it. So I finally got my messed up endings I was already desperately waiting for. Then I figured it'd be time to play a character I'm actually interested in, like Enishi, the redhead flirt who causes the most funny moments in the common route and some well-needed comic reliefs. I think without him the common route would have been a lot more boring. And at last his conflict was one I could finally relate to. No grief about deeds who can't be undone, no old-fashioned revenge no one in the modern times really understands anymore, but a good old personal conflict about one's role in the family, one's role in the world, about what he wants to do with his life and who he wants to allow to influence his life decision. I think that is a conflict most people can relate to. Not knowing where your place in the world is. Being torn between what your parents want for you and finding out what your own ambitions are. On top of this relatable conflict came his entertaining character, who had a weakness for women and alcohol. Thus, a morally debatable and yet charming flirt who just wouldn't give up no matter how cold the heroine would be. Because he falls in love with her pretty quickly. What made it hard for me to draw the line between his typical flirt behavior and when he actually got serious. Because I actually had a hard time believing a drunken flirt. Nevertheless, I liked Enishi as a character. He had some sweet romantic scenes and also some nice bad endings. Now it was time to finally tackle the Shota Suzukake, the almost annoyingly cheerful, Genki and bright youngest lad of the party. Being raised by yokai on a faraway mountain, he is not accustomed to human conventions and needs to learn a lot. Which is at the same time a chance to explain to the player some things everybody knows. Like the legend about the 5 magic swords or some traditional Japanese sweets. Nicely done, writers. Suzukake is nice to everybody, including animals and yokai he believes he can talk to, and even sees spirits. He's a goody two-shoes who doesn't want to harm anybody, but believes he can solve every problem by talking about it. So that is his mission in life, to make everybody live together in harmony. Well, good luck with that. At first I wasn't interested in him in the slightest, but then he smiled at me. No. As a reward for finishing the Shota, I allowed myself to finally play the character I was most interested in, the tsundere Kei. He is part of the security guards in Edo, going around looking after everybody. But as he witnesses a father is about to sell his daughter due to his debts, Kei intervenes and takes it upon himself to give the money to the debt collectors. And for that reason he would be willing to take any job, no matter how dangerous. So from the beginning, you know, though he acts harshly, often scolds the MC or his fellow samurai for slacking off, he is really a good guy at heart. He just takes his job extremely serious. And being strict is his way of showing that he cares. As you see, a really dear tsundere, who on the other hand gets easily flustered when complimented or shown affection. I think overall he's rather the emotional type, easily flustered, but also easily angered until he snaps and gets infuriated or even violent. His conflict felt quite personal to me, but also had a bigger scope than others, which really made it interesting. I also liked the dynamic between him and the MC. While in other routes I perceived her as almost non-existing, in Kei's route she was even allowed to argue with him and insult him in the heat of the argument. Dealing with a quick-tempered tsundere, she was allowed to also act more fiercely, which I highly enjoyed. Overall, I would say his route was the most emotional to me, because you have to learn and understand Kei's temper, fight with him a lot, realize the scope of his personal conflict, and finally discover that he's such a good and upright fellow. So that him finally finding his happiness made also me cry out of happiness too. All guides I looked up recommended to play Suzu What's His Name last. I mean, look at the names. Sagihara Sakyo, Saneyaki, Suzukake, help! Suzu What's His Name is a traveling samurai seeking to polish his swordsmanship, but always ends up hungry and without money on his travels. He's a genuine nice guy, easily flustered and always friendly. It's just a bit weird that whenever he sets out to fight a yokai, the yokai begin to run away, and sometimes when fighting he begins to smell weird. In his route, he moves in with Kayo and her father to help out at the busy tea house during the time of the Sword Festival, to earn money, food and shelter, while he also wants to participate in the contest. And quickly it turns out that strange powers seem to reside within him. And these powers made his plot most interesting to me. Though his overall character is just nice, and I hate nice guys in otome games. Unless they have a dark secret, that is. Nevertheless, I guess he's supposed to be the true root, as he says the name of the game. But I would still say that all roots feel equally important and are independent of each other. At first I didn't recognize any voice actors, maybe because the game is so old, but the cast is not bad actually. Though honestly no one particularly stood out to me. For Kei we have Ken, who sounds like a mixture of Shelby from Cupid Parasite and Kintaro from Yunohana Spring. Then Suzu What's His Name also voices Ignis in Café Enchanté and Chihiro in Clicolite Eyes. Kuroba also plays a role in Clicolite Eyes, Masato, or Riku in Leper Pretend. For Suzukake, we have Hisui from Nil Admirali no Tenbin or Shigehira from Biroshana. Way more noteworthy was the beautiful, relaxed, calm, traditional Japanese music and sound effects that immediately transported me back in time. And while I liked the design of the sprites and the little detail of them moving during the sentences, which is such a small and subtle change but makes the scene so much more engaging. But I was frankly disappointed by the CGs. The worst thing about them was the timing. The game rather chose to show a CG with only the LI doing something, instead of CGs with them together, like holding hands. That was extremely apparent in Sakyo's and Kuroba's route in my opinion, but also Suzukake would have needed some more romance. On the other hand, Kei, Enishi and Suzuramaru had a lot of couple CGs, and you could almost call Suzuramaru's ending CG steamy, which earns him my most sexy award. But too many CGs depicted rather insignificant scenes, or didn't display any interactions of the characters, which made them lack emotions. On a more positive note though, is that the artist greatly improved in her work on Shuin no Witch. So the common route consists of you sitting on a horse for several days until you arrive at your destination. I know Ghost of Tsushima is set almost 400 years earlier, but to some extent the atmosphere felt a bit similar. And I know that because I played Kenga Kimi while my boyfriend played Ghost of Tsushima, and instead of breaking the immersion, that even enhanced it. Some music tracks even sound similar. Imagine a calm moment in Ghost of Tsushima where you can hear the wind in the trees, pick some flowers, and this serenity is only interrupted by some occasional Mongols, aka yokai bandits and oni, passing by, but who don't really pose a threat to Jin, or insert LI name here, because apparently you play on easy mode anyways. On top of that, we have the conflict of the samurai. The question in most routes is, in some way or another, when or for what it is worth to wield a sword. So similar to Jin, who also struggles to come to terms with his samurai or now more ninja identity, the LIs also struggle to find their way of the sword, how they want to fulfill their duties as samurai, or even decide to drop the sword entirely and commit themselves to a peaceful life with their beloved MC, because every route splits in the 5th chapter into the Ken or Kimi path. In the Ken path, you nudge the LI into sticking to his life as a samurai or wielding his sword for whatever cause he decides as just. Weirdly enough, that more often than not bestows a bad ending upon you. I wonder what the scenario writers want to tell us with that. If you push him onto the Kimi route, he decides to drop his sword or stop fighting and decides for a peaceful life, which will bring you blissful, happy endings. But in general, it was kind of hard to guess what kind of ending you would get, which might be troublesome for people who either try to avoid bad endings or messed up maidens like me who enjoy them a lot, because this is a Rejet game, the company that brought us Black Wolf Saga. And though I had already heard that the bad ends are not as bad and bloody as they usually are in Rejet games, I still came prepared. I had expectations. I wanted blood, violence, despair, but it felt more like wanting to watch porn, and then it turns out it's Sesame Street. I think only Sakyo's bad endings were gruesome in a way, but some other so-called bad endings still felt hopeful. Even if a character died, you weren't only left with despair. Don't get me wrong, a game doesn't need to have bad endings in order to be a good game. It's just that I think I expected Kenga Kimi to be something it's not. It's not gruesome, and to my very surprise, it's not plot-driven. I expected a historical game with a samurai story to be plot-driven and fighting heavy. But it's not. It's a walk in the park, hand in hand with your ally. In the common route, you just travel, here and there interrupted by small, insignificant attacks which don't pose a real threat. The character routes feel weirdly disconnected from the overly long common route, as the common route turns out just to be a chance to get to know everybody. But the character stories have almost nothing to do with what happened in the common route. The bridal procession was just where they met. Cheers to an 11 hours long first meeting. Okay, I think. The character routes then must rock. This is probably one of these games where they lure you in with a relaxed common route, and in the character routes this peaceful facade breaks and everything will turn upside down. Well, no, I would describe the character routes as Ido's slice of life. Make a depressed samurai happy. Heal the wounds of a samurai. Help out a doctor. Fetch water from the well. Talk to a samurai. Talk to a samurai grandma. Serve some soba in your tea house. The character routes were as down to earth and relaxed as if you were playing Barrel Barricade, just 400 years ago. Only in the last 2 chapters of some routes, some slight action or tragedy came to light. But most of the so-called twists and revelations could be smelled from miles away, still in the common route even. So the individual routes didn't have a single element of surprise for me. So no plot, no surprises. Mere character interactions. Then I think, at least the romance must be good. I mean, they end up together, yes. But some routes even have the audacity to describe a kiss scene without a CG. In general, the romance is very tame. You are lucky when you get a kiss, and even more lucky if you even get a kiss CG. For most routes, I couldn't really relate to their love development. What could also be due to the almost non-existing heroine. She's very shy and seldomly speaks up, so I don't feel like I know her in any way. And another reason might be that the overall design of the LIs was a tad too feminine for my taste. But that's definitely my mistake. I should maybe pay more attention to buying games with guys I actually find attractive, instead of games with guys who all look like the Teletubbies for me. All these Teletubbies are traumatized or had a rough childhood, which can miraculously be healed by the MC, just saying one sentence. Like, "It wasn't your fault, but you are a nice guy." And poof, trauma healed. I feel loved and worthy again. Thank you, Kayo. That was all thanks to you. Wait, what? What did I miss? Wait, what did she do? Well, that was easy. Thanks, I guess. To be honest, I only felt that Kuroba's, Sakyo's and Suzukake's route felt a bit superficial, but I did enjoy Kei and Enishi. And Suzu, what his name, was also there. Another aspect treated superficially were the numerous side characters, who I expected to play an integral part of the story, as there were so many of them and they seemed so fleshed out. Especially those hot ikemen. See you tonight. But sadly, they are also of little consequence for the plot overall. Wait, there was no real overarching plot, so never mind. Luckily, they took some time in the FD to give the side characters more room. Apart from that, the FD adds more common routes to the game, accompanying the LIs on their way back or helping Kayo win a restaurant competition. Woo, more slice of life without kiss scenes. Because only after you've read these slice of life stories, the after stories for each character unlocks, containing little sequences after the different endings and some more childhood stories. And I'm still hopeful. FD served the purpose of finally giving some romance to plot-driven games. This is gonna be super romantic. Nolan, when will you learn? The FD is not romantic. It really isn't more than yet another slice of life story after each end. But no significant relationship development or little plot. This is a FD made for fans of the characters and slice of life interactions, not an FD made for me as a romance fan. Still, the FD manages to tie up some loose ends, but as I only looked into it briefly, I can't say much about that. The other aspect I wished that could have been more fleshed out are the fantasy elements. All we know is there are Oni, who are like humans, just they are Oni, and yokai, who also can be intelligent, but the existence of these two fantasy creatures doesn't really add a new layer to the story. Yokai are mostly treated as monsters, Oni as enemies. Ta-da! Here's some world building for you! There is magic and that also plays a decent role for the plot, but how it works, that depends on how convenient it is for the plot. But why bother explaining it? Or maybe I just missed why Suzukake and Hanzo can kind of beam themselves? Because I don't speak Japanese. And the game is hella difficult. Most sentences looked like this to me. I couldn't even read the freaking menu. Especially the prologue of the game made me feel as if I was a beginner again. What is this? Do they do this on purpose? Does this old man, I couldn't remember the name of even if my life depended on it, just want to make me feel frustrated? Please stop. But later in the game they chill a bit more and talk about, you know, ordering tea. And that word I know. Ta! Ding! So if you want to be sure you understand everything and not be like me, then I would recommend you only play it if you are an advanced learner, are looking for a challenge, or are interested in some traditional Japanese language. But on the other hand, that means you not only learn Edo Japanese, but also some Edo history facts, how it was structured. There were border controls, or Christianity was forbidden. Nice. Is Kimi a bad game? Not at all. Is it as good as I thought it would be? Not at all. I think the main problem for me with this game was that my expectations were just off. For me, Kimi at its heart is a slice of life Edo period game that finds convenient solutions for cliched problems, delivered by MC who is only there to heal the LI's trauma by saying something nice, and won't even earn a kiss CG for that. That sounded too negative, give me another chance. Kimi is for people who enjoy a relaxed traditional Japanese adventure with slight fantasy elements, and that is mostly character driven, and that tells a slice of life story of the life of samurai.